All right. Well, good evening. Good evening, everyone, and welcome for those who are coming back. Thank you for rejoining us. And for those who are new on the panel, we have our existing Project Radical individuals, which we will introduce shortly. But we are just delighted to have you on the final installment of the Project Radical Lung Cancer Awareness Month a webinar series. We thought we did a superb job, and we are just elated that some of you are joining us continually. The sixth night, Dr. Mohab. So we are thoroughly excited. And I am Dr. Maisha Standifer. Professionally, I am the Health Policy Director at the Satcher Health Leadership Institute at Morehouse School of Medicine. And just elated to be here alongside some of the members of Project Radical. We have Dr. Mohab Alakar, we have Chris Draft, Dr. Eugene Manley, we have Dr. Sultan and Dr. Roy on the call, and looking to see if there's anyone else. But we are, again, so excited that you were able to join us tonight. I want to focus on African-American men. And I have to do it because, as I mentioned, professionally, that's what I do. But every day for the last year and a half, I was the caregiver and a doting wife of almost 11 years to Emmanuel Standifer, who surpassed 2 complications due to stage 4 lung cancer. And so I owe this session to him. And I would like to get started. We have some special guests. We have a few members that are on tight time constraints, but we have Chris Draft, who is the founder of the Chris Draft Foundation, former NFL player, and leading the way in the White Ribbon Project, which he'll talk about. We have Dr. Eric Ayers, who is a pediatrician and internal medicine practitioner at Wayne State University. So excited to see him, and he will bring the perspective of talking about cancer and survivorship with African-American males and the population in Detroit. And then we have a community-based member who I am elated in, and he was actually a very close uncle figure to, and it's John Micah Best. And he is going to bring that perspective of the young, innovative, and transformational voice that needs to be situated as we talk about in Project Radical. We're talking about focusing on African-American population, which is disproportionately impacted by lung cancer deaths and diagnoses, especially with late stage, and African-American particularly. But we know it is broader than that. And we will start off by having Chris Draft talk a little bit about his initiatives and what's going on and where he is tonight.
Awesome. Thank you, Maisha. And yes, absolutely. This conversation is so, too personal. As a Black man in America, it's obvious that racism has created issues with us that's kind of span the gambit, healthcare being one of those. And so I'm at an event in Memphis, Tennessee right now, an event that is tied to the White Ribbon Project, that is at a central spot in Memphis. And we are shouting and screaming the importance of lung cancer awareness. And with that, it's not just shouting that we need to get people to stop smoking, not just saying that, which is critical as it relates to lung cancer, but we can't just shout it because in too many cases, people are shouting and they're like shouting at people, right? Versus saying, we care about you, we love you, and we know that there's a system that has made it difficult for you to stop and actually got you started. So we are here for you. But lung cancer is so much more than just prevention. And so we have to talk about lung cancer screening and make sure that people are aware of that. Make sure they know that there's nodule clinics. Make sure that they know that there are treatment options. Make sure that they know that research is working, that research matters. And then celebrating survivors. And so I'm here at this program, and one of the things that they're doing that is absolutely awesome is that they've asked people, everybody that's coming through here, this is a big kind of watering hole in Memphis, and they're asking them, do you have a connection with lung cancer, right? But they're not just walking away from them right away because too many people haven't been asked that. They haven't, and so it takes them a while to realize it was a sister a grandmother, a grandfather, a friend, a cousin. It takes a little while because it's probably the first time that someone's actually asked. And so as they do that, they're able to share, and then we're able to get them a white ribbon that's potentially in honor of that person, or one to just let them know that they're not alone and that we care to hear their story. So I just wanted to say that, as you know, we're here on this call, that it's important. Are Black people in lung cancer, are lung cancer survivors, do they matter, is the question that we're answering, that we have to answer with our actions every day. Today, I'm at a place where that's what they're doing. They're answering it very clearly by celebrating and taking the message strategically where the people are, that yes, they matter. Yes, this group matters. And yes, we're going to take the message to them.
Thank you so much, Chris. And I know we talked briefly about what's occurring in in terms of the future generations and survivorship and what it is in terms of education and what we need to do. And I know you have some initiatives that are going on as well with some young individuals.
Yeah, so I had a chance to go down to Columbus, Georgia yesterday, drove down from Atlanta, and this amazing group of young people at Columbus Jordan Vocational High School, they made 160 white ribbons. And if you guys don't know, the White Ribbon Project is a project that was built based on a survivor and her husband saying that enough is enough. If the Cancer Center, if the organizations don't want to say that the people matter, that lung cancer awareness matters all the time, then we'll do it. And they made a white ribbon. That white ribbon now, they've shared it with other survivors by making them for other people, to the tune of over 3,000 ribbons, knowing that it was going to be communities that had to be able to make them. And what I'm saying is this amazing community in Columbus, these amazing young people, young high school students, a construction group, class as it relates to a high school, made 160. And so when we look at this big number, that's 235,000 people that are diagnosed with lung cancer in America, it's going to take a team. It's going to take a huge village. It's going to take a huge effort to be able to let all of them know that they're not alone. But if we don't just look at our lung cancer community, the ones that are involved, but really allow ourselves to see the other people, these young people, these people in the community that would love to be involved, we know it's possible. So we just have to allow them to be a part of it.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Chris. We will let you return back to your activities in Memphis, and safe travels. Thank you again.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you. And so as we continue to move the needle and advance in terms of the equitable solutions and treatment options in the medical arena, we are going to transition over to Dr. Ayers. We're so elated to have him. Of course, I'm elated because he's my uncle, so but I have to be professional and call him Dr. Ayers. So Dr. Ayers, can you please just continue to elaborate? I think it was great what Chris talked about in terms of kind of starting and initiating and empowering not just our community, but we know we need to start young and we need to start anew. And where do we start talking about it, and how do we start addressing it? I think in previous sessions we've held, Dr. Manley talked about in terms of developing training opportunities, not just for those in medical school, but we know it needs to start in elementary. So what do you think we should do, Dr. Ayers, in terms of prioritizing, lung cancer awareness in African-American community, African-American men, and how should we start this education?
Well, I think that, thank you again for having me on, and I excuse my attire, but this is COVID time, so I exchanged and put something on quickly so I can be on the webinar. Let's approach this from 3 stages. Let's approach it from young adults and moving to adulthood, and then those that actually have cancer. I think that politically wise, and it is aspirational, but it's one that we must deal with, is that in our communities, we tend to be located in areas that are high or a significant amount of air pollution is present. It's no question that even in Detroit, until recently, the incinerator was located right in the midtown of the city. And that would not happen in any of the suburban areas. So we have to start realizing that we have to have a voice, a political voice. We also have to realize that the quality of where we live is not only situated in just our housing, but the air quality, the ability to be in free space outside without pollutants or toxins that are there, and realize that until that is addressed, we are going to be at risk. And that includes our youngsters, because lung disease starts at an early age. And once the lung is irritated, inflamed, it puts you at high risk for other things. Okay. So I think that that's where the education is, how our youth can be advocates of early on, is by advocating for writing legislation, the legislators about what is going on they're experiencing, and making sure that the public health community in general, be it the health department, the county health department, have in place personnel or boards or reviewers looking at air quality, not only in the general area, but in the high schools also, because we're talking about something that begins early on. There's a big push for secondhand smoke, but now we have to worry about other areas that smoke and irritants may be present. So I think that's where we have to look at our young and ask them to be creative, and that it becomes an avenue of hope and aspiration. When we look at young adults and adolescents, I think that we're at a dual period of time. And the reason I say that is that we may have some stagnation as it relates to cigarette smoke as an irritant itself, but we also have to bring in vaping. And we also have to look at something that may be helpful, but it depends on where we are in the spectrum, marijuana and cannabis use. And the reason I say that is that it may be a natural product, as some of my brothers tell me, but my argument to them now is that what you're smoking is clonation or a clone product, and it's not necessarily natural. So you have to then ask what has been in the process of that cloning, because they're growing products within the matter of between 40 and 70 days, depending where you are. And even though they're growing it, what is the fertilization process? Or what are the chemicals that are being used? And just because somebody says it's organic or non-organic, what does that mean in the construct of the bigger picture? And that also relates to now, because it is legalized across the country. Now we have to worry about the second or tertiary exposure that people are getting, who may not even be asking to be exposed, but may be exposed. And it has nothing to do about the medicinal properties. It's a cause of the exposure and the irritants that may be passed on. And so I think that that's the educational part that we have to raise the equation for, because we are putting ourselves at risk in one sense, maybe being using a healthy method, alternative method for pain, seizure control as it relates to kids, etc. But we may put ourselves at risk. So we have to understand what the risk benefit is. In regards to going into the diagnosis and the survivorship, I think that first of all, we need to get the word out that if you have a cough is not a cough, that a cough may mean something else. And as a patient advocate and as patients advocate for themselves, they need to be aggressively asking about what is that cough a signal of and what is the workup. And then also asking, once the workup has been initiated, is there anything else that needs to be done? Do I need to see a pulmonologist? Do I need to have an X-ray, a CAT scan? Those things need to be followed through. The other thing is that I think that in patient awareness is that anything that is abnormal on a chest X-ray or a CT MRI needs to be followed up. And that's the part that we need more advocacy and more training as it relates to the medical field itself and the patients, because sometimes patients are not told because they don't know. Sometimes some physicians don't follow up because they're judging the patient's symptoms, not knowing that something can be brewing and developing without the patient actually knowing. And then third, there's something called allergic rhinitis or postnasal drip syndrome that may present with a cough, but that patient still may have something ongoing. So I think that the education of that becomes important. Next is that if there is something seen on the X-ray, that not only the follow-up, but what does that mean? Is it a nodule? Is it a specule? Is it a granuloma or a benign finding? Those things need to be involved because the decision-making process, if done early on, can be very instrumental in survivorship and care. And I think that that's the part that we're missing. And why are we missing? Sometimes because of bias of the physicians, okay? And I'm speaking that as a physician, that sometimes your bias or our bias kicks in. Two, the lack of access. Because I may go to a doctor who may initiate the process of the workup, but my insurance may change because I'm on my parents' insurance, I'm in the government exchange, and I change the insurance, and therefore I see a different doctor, and therefore the diagnosis doesn't carry, or the workup doesn't carry over. And so we need to understand that our health, the temple that we carry, we must carry that temple and the records therein wherever we go. And so as an advocate, be it the patient, the family member, the loved one, that informational resourcefulness and gathering is very important because you have to carry that wherever you go. And then lastly, I think that once a diagnosis is started, the understanding of what that means and the life changes that may cause have to be early on talked about. And that is an area that some primary care physicians don't like to talk about. They defer to the oncologist. But if you are the steward of that patient's health, then you should engage in that conversation early on, which means that this may be the diagnosis. If it is a diagnosis, these are the steps that need to be followed. Once the diagnosis is made, I'm going to help you and stewardship you through the maze that may be there. I may not be the person who, as a primary care provider, gives you the oncological treatment, but I can help you understand the language, the diagnostic workup, and what things may be needed to help you in fighting the illness that you have. And that is very important. Lastly, I think that in all chronic illnesses, we forget about the significant other, because whatever that diagnosis is, it's going to affect the significant other. And because I've been ill and myself, may not understand that because we're trying to be stoic and avoid them. But even in that stoic action, we are affecting them because they're asking how they can help us. And by not communicating what is going on, or even what our fears are, how can they help if they don't know what our fears are? Because we're worried about being a man. And I think that is the last point that I will say, that as an African-American male, we have to ask for assistance and ask for help. We have to ask for our sheroes and heroes and queens to rise and help us, because we cannot do this alone. And then we have to have some trust in the system. We have to realize that the trust in the system, it is a two-way system. But that trust is that you have to be involved in the system, because if you're not involved in it, you're not going to be able to trust it, because if it's haphazard. So once you board the highway of medicine, don't be afraid that even if you get back off, get back on, because that's the only way that wellness is going to be achieved, or diagnosis is going to be made, and only survivorship is going to be able to be addressed. And I think that lastly, brothers, we need to continually be involved in the process. I give an analogy, and I'll be short with this. Up until recently, going to a doctor for a male was basically related on a number of factors: a sports physical, being seen in the ER, having a psychiatric diagnosis, or unfortunately STD. Okay, and if they went to the doctor, or a job interview, but otherwise they may not go to the doctor. But yet, when you look at our cars and how we manage our cars, which are a joy, we spend more time making sure we get that 3-month oil change. So let's transverse that into the temple of our body and say, every year I need to get that oil change. I need for the doctor to look under the hood to see what's going on. Because if I do that, that is part of my wellness. Yes, it may be time out of my day. Yes, I may not be necessarily feeling ill, but oftentimes early attention and picking up of illness is done just by that. And the other thing is that that's where the conversation is had and information can be received that may pick up on some awareness of things going on, or surveillance of things that may be already there. So I'll leave you with that, Maisha. I know I'm on a time constraint, but I hope I covered all
this is excellent. I think this is excellent. And just as we were talking, and we're working in the settings where African Americans are and African American men are. So we talk about barbershops. We talk about car locations. I know we did unconventional places and AAU basketball tournaments in Tampa. So those are the places and the spaces where we can have individuals come and conduct health fairs, screenings, and continual care, right? You talked about the continuum. And so that I think is that we need to talk about. And then lastly, I think you did highlight, Dr. Ayers, in terms of how primary care physicians can become champions for cancer care. How can they really be sustainable? I know you practice a little different then, but how do you get your peers and maybe those who don't normally serve in urban cities like a Detroit, Atlanta, or DC, but other places in Utah and Portland or Wisconsin? What can you do as a primary care physician to help, and what can they do in terms of champion for cancer care?
Well, first of all, being at the medical school, I do get a chance to educate those that are going to take care of me in the future about what they
Yes.
should do. But it's very important that those in primary care understand that this is not a vital sign. This is not a
Mhm.
checkoff. Getting lung cancer screening is not. It's a lifeness that must become part of the process in talking. And it's almost as if we go to smoking and cessation and we're trying to motivate, you keep going over and over because you want to know, you want to motivate the patient to know what the risk factors are and why they should do it. Oftentimes, if it's just a checkoff bar, patients will feel it. They'll
Mhm.
understand it. They don't understand why they should go. But and even in the face of them stopping smoking within a certain period of time, they still are at risk. And so they may say, no, doc, I already stopped smoking. I don't need to be risk. I don't have to have that risk. No, we need to make sure because even though you stop smoking, the air quality and other things that are in your life put you at risk. And so we need to make sure. We talk about occupational lung disease. You need to understand that that may coalesce and play in part. And one of the areas that we don't do well in medicine, and I say that because the business of medicine doesn't allow you to, is asking about occupational health, asking about military history. Not every patient goes to the VA. And those are spaces and places that if you don't ask those questions, you're going to miss something. When you think about asbestos, mesothelioma, irritants that may be exposed to that in the process of being in the war field or in the battlefield itself. And so, or in, as we are in automobile, paint and other carcinogens that you may inhale. So again, the occupation, what people have done, and ask that not in a belittling way, because oftentimes you may have people that are handymen. And so they're journeys and they're not having a job that is a traditional job. Well, the way you ask it is, what have you liked to be employed in? And what have you actually been employed in? I mean, that simple logistic of language is very important because they may have had to do the journeyman, but what they would have liked to do maybe something else. And again, you open up that window of opportunity for them to give you some input. And I think that's very important also.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Ayers. As you talk about it in terms of how can primary care physicians, be kind of the lead into cancer care. But once you talked about the diagnoses and the treatment options, what happens to the person that's being diagnosed and what's going on? You talk about social determinants of health, where they live, where they worship, where they play, also how they vote. It's all impacting their health outcome and the legislation that's made to go get access and to have insurance. And so I think this is excellent, and it needs to be a platform as we talk about a space where individuals can share. And I'd like to have John Michael Best talk a little bit about that before we go on to Dr. Sultan in terms of we call it unconventional or maybe now conventional ways. Social media right now is very, very pertinent to what us getting out the message. We're doing that in Project Radical, but really instrumental in terms of survivorship and changing of lifestyle, especially for African-American men. And I would like for John Michael to talk about some of the efforts that he did. I know especially with Emmanuel Standiford is excellent in terms of creating a podcast, which you see in the back, Folk, I Got Something to Say. This was created by my husband who talked about Folk, I Got Something to Say. And it was really a messaging portal for individuals who, maybe, not be, and we talk about be a primary care physician, right? Be an oncologist, be a pulmonologist, but it is a platform and a space because everyone has something to say. Everyone has something to say. You may not say it in a way that is correct, or maybe dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's and enunciating, but it is your voice and it is your particular platform. And I know John Michael was very successful at presenting that. So can you talk a little bit about what you all did?
Thanks again for inviting me to the call, first and
Yes.
foremost. And so glad to be here. First, I want to say is that I'm very passionate about personal development. And that's how that's how my relationship got rekindled with Unc, as I call him. I call him Unc because we got extremely close during the process of him dealing with his illness. So I had a podcast called Financial Fashion Talk Podcast where we talked about life principles and positivity and ways that we can become a greater version of ourselves. So with him watching our podcast, he ended up inboxing me one day. And I had known him all my life, but I didn't know that he had moved back to Atlanta. And I didn't know he was diagnosed with lung cancer. And what's so crazy is that during the interview, that's when I really found out what illness he had and everything. So I found that out live, so that was my first time learning about it and everything like that, which was very good. But at the same time, it was kind of bittersweet. But long story short, he wanted to get more involved in that, communicating and actually doing things that he enjoyed. And that's one of the things that we talked about on our podcast. We talked about doing things that will actually change your mindset, that will actually change the way you think. And when you change the way you think, you influence the way that you feel. You feel better. When you do positive things, when you have a positive environment, when you just surround yourself with love and with positivity, it has a direct effect on your health. And I seen that with working with him. He immediately we immediately motivated him to start his own podcast. So we started talking on the phone. I started coming over to the house and we started conversating about how we can get messages out, how we can influence people, how we can talk about different things that will wake up our young Black men in America and around the world. And that's what's so powerful about what we're doing right now. Actually, what we're doing in this call is so powerful. And I want everybody to know that us just coming together, that's very powerful. Just people coming together on one call with one objective in mind, and that's to spread awareness, about things that could benefit our community. And that's what it's been all about. And to see that process, to see him go through that process, him being positive, going through his situation. I seen him so many times. I seen him pretend so many times that he wasn't hurting. Because of the positivity, because of what we were doing, he put his feelings aside, even though he was in pain. Like we said earlier, he was in stage 4. So I'm pretty sure his pain level and his pain tolerance had to be high to do the activities that we were doing. He would have long conversations with us, and I know like shortness of breath is one of the things that would happen, but through all of that, he enjoyed it. And that was what was powerful. It was so powerful to see that because he loved it. He started to love it and he started spreading more love. And for everybody that know him, he's very big on love. So that's one of the lessons that I wanted to bring out, because I consider myself a personal development expert. I study and I implement things that will make me become a better person, because I believe that we all are transitioning. Every day of our lives, we are transitioning. Hopefully, we are transitioning in the greatest version of ourselves, and that's our goal. And so, through no matter what situation that you're in life, the main objective is to improve and become better people. And with that mindset, I feel that us Black men will have better lives, better quality of life by having that mindset. And that's what I do. I want to promote positivity. I want to promote self-improvement. And I want to get out here and do more events like this to where we can actually come together and collaborate. And that's one of the main things I heard the doctor talking about earlier, the last doctor who got up. He mentioned about, coming together and spreading that information, and that's very, very important. No matter the circumstance, no matter the situation, we have to come together and we have to spread positivity, no matter if you was diagnosed or no matter if you are someone who just providing support. Positivity works on both sides. If you are sick, it works on that side as well. If you are just someone that's providing love and support to people who are in survivorship, positivity works on that end. So positivity is something that we all could play a role in. And I believe that each and every last one of us have a job to do. God gave us something to give. So I thank you again for giving me the opportunity to speak, because this is something I'm very passionate about. And as you guys can see, with me working with UNC, as I did, I fell in love with it even more. just spreading positivity and spreading love. And my name is Mr. John Michael Best, and I'm a personal development expert, and I'm the CEO of Financial Fashion Clothing Company. And I appreciate everybody on this call for listening and giving me an opportunity in the space. And I thank you, Miss Standifer, family, auntie, loved one. I appreciate all that you do and giving me this space, because you know how passionate I am about communicating this, communicating what we're doing, communicating the personal development part of what I do. You know, I love communicating that. So thank you again. Thank you for the opportunity.
It is, you are here. This is your space. This is all of our spaces, but more particularly, like I am talking and we're hearing, hopefully you're hearing the theme that I talked about. I want to highlight the Black male this evening when we're talking about the most disparate population being impacted. We know it is global. We know what is going on in general with lung cancer, but really the late diagnosis in the late stage, which I think some of it could have been preventable with my husband. So thank you again, John Michael. You know, we love you. I love you. And as my husband mentioned and talked about often, he has something to say. And he also said, what? Love is the best medicine. That is what it was. So he said, no matter what, love is the best medicine, and that is the antidote. And I want to transition over to Dr. Sultan, who is joining us this evening. I know he's working with several populations here throughout metropolitan Atlanta and Georgia, particularly, you know, community-based research. And, you know, we're elated that you are able to join us this evening to talk about cancer care, survivorship, and what's going on in terms of research and what you're doing. So if you can highlight some of the efforts that you're doing within the community.
Well, thank you. And secondly, I would like to apologize to all of my colleagues who are present here today. I have been missing in action, but I have created a beast here at the university, and it's coming now to kill me. I swear to you, over the last 30 days, I slept only 90 hours. I wake up and I go to sleep at 2 a.m. in the morning, and I was aware of what's going on here. It's not an excuse, but it is what it is. Anyhow, apologies again. I'm glad I was able to escape today and be here at this moment. And I'm thankful to all of you and to those people whom I don't see, but I'm glad that you're all here. My work, Morhaf and Maisha got me actually introduced and interested in lung cancer. Maisha in particular holds a very special place in my heart, and so did Emmanuel. I do believe that they fell in love in my backyard in Tampa. I invited a whole bunch of people and to what I used to call the cheap wine and cheese parties,
Yes.
parties.
Yes.
And I was in the kitchen serving people, you know, wings and Jamaican jerk and whatnot. And one of Maisha's best friends, Dr. Lauren Johnson, came to the kitchen and said, you have to come out here and look at this. And I went out and I said, what? She said, look at Maisha. And I said, so what? And she said, well, what do you call that? I said, well, I call that love. Because at that moment, Mr. Standifer was laying flat on Maisha's lap, and she was stroking his head. And then I went back to serving wine and left them alone, and they got married. They ended up having a beautiful child. This is how I'm connected to Maisha.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And then through Maisha, Morhaf became part of my life. And I'm glad to have both of you in my camp as good friends and colleagues. My interests are in cancer. I'm a public health professional. I'm a behavioral scientist, a statistician, and then ended up being somehow public healthy. But my interests are in cancer among Black people. And up to very recently, up to this moment, my time, I was in, most of my work was in chronic diseases plus prostate cancer and breast cancer among Black people, Black men prostate cancer, Black women breast cancer. And if I'm to say anything about cancer, and so to me, lung cancer is no different except for what the doctor had just said. The exposures, the involuntary, forced upon inhaling of substances which are in the air because an incinerator is in town, or somebody is living near the highway, or somebody is living in a bad place and the air quality is not bad, is not good, and so on and so forth. But the rest of the stuff, so in this particular case, I think of social justice and equity a lot. But of all of the things I have learned, and that includes lung cancer, I've learned two things about our people, and that is the great majority of them are afraid of cancer. And that is the saddest thing I've found out. And this is very important, because why is it that every time we talk about somebody who is diagnosed with cancer, and with the minute you say, okay, minority, and the minute you say Black, I can close my eyes and I would say, okay, stage 3 or stage 4, initial diagnosis. And the question is why? Well, two reasons. So one, they have been out in the cold because of insurance issues. Two, they have insurance. They went to the doctor saw something that is not good. And they said, I suspect this might be cancerous. Let's follow through. There's resistance, there's fear. I don't want to know. And then finally, when things happen and it becomes a big issue, pain and so on and so forth, diagnosis happens, it's too late. And the response is always take it out. That's the classic response. And so I believe as a community, we are privileged with knowledge and practice, some of us. And I believe that education is exceptionally important to our people in terms of how being, just the idea of not being afraid to ask the right questions, not being afraid to accept the diagnosis, through with it, early on. Health is very important, and that you have to tackle everything early on, and that a chance to survive. So I have the lack of knowledge is overwhelming, and you better believe it. I have been in, Maisha would know this. She and I actually worked together in this project way back on prostate cancer when we dealt with people in Florida, in Pinellas County, Pasco County, and Hillsborough County. I was going into the community to talk to men at barbershops, and I found out nobody knew. Nobody knew the basic male anatomy, where the prostate is, what it does. I remember this young man who's a barber, 29-year-old, 31-year-old man, because I was explaining to him the function, what testosterone does, and the place of the prostate, and yada 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 yada. And I by mistake I mentioned aggression and testosterone, and we can hear a young woman outside his shop yelling at her boyfriend on the phone, and he said, "Well, does she have a prostate?" Now, for a 31-year-old young man to ask me if a woman has a prostate, that was, to me, is beyond any. It just shocked me. So I can dampen that, but I can say that is power and empowering people. That's number one. Number two, advocacy. Black people don't have strong advocates. They have very strong political advocates. They don't have strong health advocates. And so, and I'm not talking health in general, go exercise, eat well. No, I would like to have a specialized advocacy. An advocate on cancer, not just cancer, an advocate on lung cancer, an advocate on prostate cancer, advocate on breast cancer, very specific. And then the simpler ones, you can lump them on and bring some advocate on that. But we don't have that kind of specialized advocacy. We have very strong political advocacy. We have none of that. The last thing is, education should not be just education in healthy living and health behaviors. It should be about the resources which are available to people in the community and beyond. Maisha, you took Emmanuel to Tampa to go to the best of the best, basically. Moffitt Cancer Center and Research Institute, because you knew somebody over there, and then he was able to connect you to somebody, and he got help. And Morhaf is an MD. He knows his stuff inside and out, so he can take care of himself. But if you take the average person who can read and write at the 7th and 9th grade level, this is typical American. We cannot just present them with material on paper or on a computer or say, go check that website. I don't think there's an understanding of that. We have found that out. We found that out in our research. We have to translate English itself into English. We couldn't use the word screening. We have to go to something of blood work for somebody to understand it. And so the idea is not only advocacy, but the right kind of advocacy that speaks in two different ways, in two directions, 180 degrees. One direction, advocate on behalf of those who cannot advocate for themselves, to the higher ups. This is what we're doing tonight. If someone is listening, okay? Or if someone would ultimately look at this videotaping or this taping of this, and then advocate backwards to the people themselves. Basically say, this is what I have done. This is what you should expect coming down the turnpike. Because there would be, surprise is not my game. I don't like surprising anybody, period. And I don't think when people say, oh, here's our advocate, they have to get feedback as to what has been done and what results to expect and when to expect them. And that is the hard part of all of this. And the last thing which I have learned is that, and this is coming back to Mr. Standiford's phrase, love is love. And the greatest thing that you can have is love. We love people. We need to demonstrate that. And incidentally, by the way, I listen to him every day. Something happened to my car audio. So I was listening to Emmanuel podcast, the interview, and I had it on my phone and I hooked my phone to my car. My car, somehow your husband lives in my car every day. He's living my car. If he rides my car, you will hear him immediately. The minute I turn it on, if I turn the sound system on, Emmanuel comes on every single day, every single time. Yep, he's living in my car. So I listen to him every day, and it's comforting to me. But I think ultimately, as scientists, we have to assume that we ultimately have that humanity. We cannot say, like, as doctors, we're supposed to take the human out of you, or PhDs are supposed to make you objective, take the human out of you. I think ultimately behind the science, behind everything, we have to love what we do, and we have to love what we do for those people we are trying to do for, the things that we're trying to do for them. And so we love what we do. We love the people that are the subjects of what we're trying to do. And ultimately, I think, and this is the ultimate, and that is respect for the fact that they know about their situation better than we, and we better listen to them very humbly and very carefully. And that's what I have learned.
Yes, yes. Thank you. And thank you for sharing that story. I forget that story. It's that love story in your backyard. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That was at the infancy stage when it was all butterflies. Yeah.
No kid.
Before they stopped. Yeah, before they stopped.
No kid, no PhD, no marriage.
Yeah, so it was all fun. So
Yeah.
Thank you again, Dr. Sultan, for sharing. I do want to just definitely go around and get some final feedback and thoughts from the rest of our Project Radical crew, especially we talk about the African-American male. We know we have a great representation on Project Radical with BIPOC professionals. And so we just want to highlight their knowledge and their expertise. And I'll go into Dante, and then I'll go into Dr. Manley prior to going into Upal, and then Dr. Morhoff.
Well, thank you, Maisha. And I just want to say I appreciate the powerful words here. And that was also such a great love story as well. I heard that. I just picture you rubbing his head, laying he's laying in your lap. That's kind of dope. But no, I appreciate everything that's been said today, and the real effort to recognize the power in the stories and the experiences that everyone brings to the table. I mean, yes, the data can point to various outcomes, but the people who are experiencing these outcomes, these disparities, have so much to share and to tell us and to bring some knowledge to the table. And that's what we are experiencing today. That adds so much value to the work itself. So using these experiences can help us learn lessons about what steps we need to take next and how we can support. And so I appreciate everybody. I didn't have much to say. Everybody's pretty much wrapped it up, but I would say let's use these sessions. Let's arm ourselves with the education and the knowledge about things like screening or testing or working with our providers, so that when we encounter these situations, we know the stuff, right? You stay ready, so you ain't gotta get ready. And
Mhm.
so whatever is being done, we all need to be involved and bring everyone together to the table and push for meaningful change in policies that can affect our own communities. And so that's what we are focused on, bringing, radical change.
Thank you. Dr.
Mhm.
Manley.
Good evening, and just want to thank everyone that's been on today's panel and our other sessions. We taught a lot of people about disparities, biomarkers, diagnosis, running through your treatment course. Earlier this week, I jumped the gun and did workforce development. But I'll tie all of what we're doing today into some of this. And just some of you joined today, what we know is that about that Black PIs are about 1.7 times less likely to get NIH grants funded than their white counterparts. I think I pulled up AMA stats, and I think in 2000, the percentage of Black medical school faculty was about 2.8%, and I think as of 2020, it was up to 3.83%. But the bulk of that increase was from an increase in Black female faculty, still no change in the males. We know that there is bias in NIH peer review, grant review, whether it's criterion score, priority scores. And if you look at some of the stuff like Ginther, Hop, Gilpin, and Nest, they show that, like, if you even go by percentiles, no Black applicants with a percentile lower than 34% got funded, but there were, I forgot the number, there were at least a noticeable number of white PIs that were funded in the 34 to 59 percentile, which should not be fundable range. And so what this means is that you have a workforce that can't get grants and can't get funding. And if they can't get funding, they can't be considered professionals, and then they can't sit on reviews. And if they can't sit on reviews, then they can't advocate for other people that either look like them or are doing work in disparities. And so minority applicants tend to take more revisions to get grants out. And so part of the stuff we were talking about is building earlier pipeline programs to get more minority children into STEM, starting from middle school, elementary, and you can keep them engaged and do college prep in high school. So we have more coming into college. And then when they go on to grad and professional, we don't lose them, because the ones that get through right now are already the super motivated and determined, but how do we ensure the rest that want to do it have access? So this is a lot of stuff we're working on in Project Radical.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Manley. Well, we know that, the pipeline and the training efforts that are being promoted and definitely funded by your organization is very critical in terms of talking about lung cancer, right? And if you don't have physicians like a Dr. Ayers in an area, like I said, if you're not in an urban serving a population, then what do you do? As believe Dr. Hill on Monday and Shirese Pompey really highlighted the care and the communication that it can be damnable, right? It can be damaging, and you're thinking, wow, how could someone just say, hey, you have cancer everywhere, and kind of not really explain and communicate. And with a patient that is kind of just out there talking about they have stage 4 cancer, and that's all you say. So we really need to develop, to me, I don't want to say bedside manner, but in terms of being very empathetic and having that being universal and not pinpointing and picking, as Shirese mentioned, that when a doctor looked at another doctor and said, hey, let's treat her as my sister. That should not be said or even thought of, but it should be universal. So we know that it's very key in terms of sustaining and creating that early stage development of, we call it STEM, but, making, STEM or sciences cool, and making health, I call it making and making it kind of, approachable and something that's individuals and those particular children want to participate in and continue on through high school and go to college and go to medical school or get a PhD. How do we make it, happy and make it kind of inviting for those particular children on to young adults and sustain that effort. So I would like to transition over to Dr. Roy, and then we'll close out with Dr. Morhoff. Thank you.
Thanks, Maisha. And I don't have much to add to this very, very powerful discussion. And I'm a little bit discombobulated. I have tears in my eyes just listening to this discussion. And everything that was said is so near and dear to me. And I was just sort of reflecting on my journey to this space today.
Mhm.
You know, I was born in India, and my connection with lung cancer was through family. And here I am surrounded by such a powerful group of people. And you know, lung cancer is what brought us together, but I think we have much more than common, much more than lung cancer in common. And I'm
Yes.
just going to just quote what Dr. Sultan said, that all of us need to have that humanity. I think
Yes.
we are connected as human beings, and I think we all need to hold each other accountable to make sure that everyone is a brother or a sister or a father or a mother. I think that's the only way we can make a change.
Thank you, Dr. Roy. Dr. Morha.
Thank you, Maisha, for facilitating this really great, wonderful discussion, and for everyone for sharing perspectives. I come to this space as a person who's surviving cancer. November marks 5 years since my diagnosis, and that comes with burden, and urgency. Burden in the sense that I don't know how long I will live. I could, people, you know, with the ALK space, 82 months is reasonable average. I lost dear friends who are more worthy of living than I am. My brother, my friend Emmanuel, is among those. And that urgency makes me want to participate and makes me want to be. And today is a great honor for me. That's why I wanted to, from the beginning. I usually sit in the back, or try to sit in the back and leave the conversation for people who can lead from the community. But today I wanted to participate because I feel this is a huge honor that I don't get every day, and I wanted to allow that for myself.
Yes.
There's a lot of work to be done, but that work is a lot of work to be done for the goal that we all want. And I would say, and I want to invite us to imagine that space where people are born equal, and when they live, they have opportunities for them to grow, to develop, to see beauty, to laugh, to dance, to sing, and to learn. We're all gonna get sick. There are no guarantees. We don't come to this life with a promise that we're going to be healthy. So whatever it means. We're going to be sick, and we're gonna suffer, we're gonna struggle. But imagine if those among us who struggle have the support that they need and have space to turn that struggle into opportunities for learning, to become resilient, to become stronger. We don't invite pain to ourselves, but when pain comes, we get tougher. When struggle comes, we practice, we exercise, we get our resiliency sharpened, we develop more tools, we discover aspects in ourselves that maybe we were leaving to the side because we were comfortable, comfort space. But when we're challenged with struggle, then we're forced to bring out all what's in us of force to live for ourselves and for those who we love, and to continue. Imagine that space when everyone has opportunities to learn and be themselves and enjoy living, and when they struggle, they become more resilient. Imagine that space when people have access to things, when people can have health, when people have education, when people have those who care for them and treat them like humans. Is that a lot? No, it's not. It's not. That's the essence of justice. That's the essence of fairness. We have a lot of advantages. In lung cancer, people did not used to live, and now they're living. there are a lot of advances in science that made our lives easier. Why not those become available to people equitably? Some people may want certain things and others may choose other things. But fairness is a virtue. Fairness is a value that we should aspire for. Project Radical is about that. We don't have all the answers. And when we came together, Maisha leading us and connecting us with people, and Emmanuel's legacy. When we came together, we were brainstorming, we were thinking, we had goals, and we may not even agree on everything. But with time, we're working together, and we came and we did work. I believe it's important. The work of sharing information, sharing knowledge, and inviting others to participate. We want more of that. It is a project, and in the project, everyone can participate. Very important, though, leaving the people who are having the experience, who live the experience, lead, giving them the space, and everyone can learn from them first, because they're living. This is not the end. This is the beginning. And Project Radical, and we in Project Radical have a lot of work to do. I want to be around to see the fruits of our work. And I want the opportunity for people to survive and continue to be available for everybody, because I also got something to say.
Thank you, Dr. Morhoff. Thank you. And you are around. We are continuing to be radical. You have something to say. As Emmanuel Standifer mentioned, you have something to say. We have the antidote. We might not have that particular pill or that chemo, but we know that love is the best medicine. It is the best medicine for all of us. We are in this together. Let us all continue to be radical. As we shared the Facebook page, we are focusing on research, demonstration, education, and information to inform those who are most disproportionately impacted by lung cancer. We're here. We thank you, community. We thank you, Project Radical members. We continue to be strong because we all have something to say, and say it loud. We thank you for celebrating with us. For November is the National Lung Cancer Awareness Month, and this is dedicated to all the lung cancer survivors, those victorious winners. Thank you all. Have a good evening.